Magee hit the glass roof of the Saint-Nazaire railway station hard enough to tear it open. A moment earlier, he had been falling through the cold air over occupied France with no parachute on his body, no aircraft beneath him, and no way to slow down. Above him, the B-17 that had carried him across the English Channel was breaking apart under German fire. Below him, the city, the harbor, the rail lines, and the station roof rushed up through the haze. Magee was unconscious for part of the fall. When he came through the glass, the roof shattered around him, and the force threw him down onto the station floor in a storm of broken panes and twisted framing. He should have been dead before anyone reached him. He was 23 years old. Alan Eugene Magee had come from Plainfield, New Jersey, the youngest of 6 children. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, he joined the United States Army Air Forces and became part of the Great American Bombing Campaign over Europe. He was assigned to the 361st Bomb Squadron, 303rd Bomb Group, 8th Air Force, flying in a B-17 Flying Fortress named Snap, Crackle, Pop. His job was one of the most exposed and feared aboard the aircraft. Magee was the ball turret gunner. The ball turret hung beneath the belly of the bomber like a small metal sphere. A gunner squeezed into it with his knees near his chest, surrounded by guns, glass, controls, and almost no room to move. From there, Magee watched the underside of the formation and searched the sky for German fighters coming up from below. It was a place built for visibility and firepower, not comfort. In battle, it could become a trap. By early January of 1943, Magee had already flown combat missions, but the raid on Saint-Nazaire was his 7th. The target was part of the German naval war machine on the French coast, where U-boat facilities and torpedo storage areas made the port a dangerous and important objective. Saint-Nazaire was heavily defended because both sides understood what it meant. For the bomber crews, reaching it meant flying through flak, fighters, cold, oxygen masks, and the knowledge that a mission could turn deadly before the bombs were away. On January 3rd, Snap, Crackle, Pop joined the daylight raid. The bomber climbed with the formation and crossed toward France. Inside the aircraft, the crew worked through the routine that kept men alive. Oxygen flowed through masks. Guns were checked. Ammunition belts were ready. Interphone voices carried over engine noise. Each man had a station, and each station mattered. As the bombers approached the target area, German anti-aircraft guns opened up. Black bursts appeared around the formation, expanding in the sky like sudden fists. The sound inside the B-17 was not just explosions. It was metal striking metal, fragments tearing through skin, fabric, controls, and fuel lines. Magee's ball turret was hit. The turret became damaged and unusable, and he was wounded by shrapnel. He climbed out of the cramped turret and moved into the bomber's fuselage. He needed his parachute. Like other ball turret gunners, he could not wear it inside the turret because there was not enough space. His chute had to be kept nearby inside the aircraft. But when Magee reached for it, he found it had been damaged and rendered useless. In that moment, the rules of survival changed. A bomber in combat could be abandoned if a man had a chute. Magee did not. The B-17 continued to take punishment. Another hit tore into the aircraft. Part of the right wing was damaged badly enough that the plane went into a violent spin. Men were thrown against the inside of the bomber. Wind, smoke, fire, and cold rushed through broken sections. At high altitude, every second without proper oxygen mattered. Magee was moving through the aircraft when he blacked out. He was thrown clear. No one could save him after that. There was no handhold, no line, no reserve chance waiting below. He fell from roughly 20,000 to 22,000 feet, a height of about 4 miles. The air was thin and freezing. At first, he was unconscious from lack of oxygen. Later accounts said he recovered awareness during the fall, long enough to understand that the earth was coming up and that there was nothing he could do to stop it. He prayed before impact. The fall should have killed him on open ground. It should have killed him in a street, on stone, on rails, or in the harbor. Instead, Magee came down over the railway station at Saint-Nazaire. The station roof was glass supported by steel. It was not soft. but it broke. When Magee struck it, the glass gave way and absorbed part of the force that would have ended him instantly. He crashed through the roof, through the shower of glass, and down into the station. People nearby found an American airman alive on the floor. The injuries were catastrophic. Magee had shrapnel wounds from the aircraft damage. He had broken bones. His nose and eye were badly injured. His lung and kidney were damaged. His right arm was nearly severed. He was unconscious, bleeding, and deep in enemy-held France. The fall had not killed him, but survival was still uncertain. Without treatment, he would die anyway. German forces took him prisoner, but they also got him medical care. A German military doctor worked on him, including the arm that was nearly lost. Magee later survived the surgery and the first terrible stretch after impact. The same enemy who had filled the sky with flak now held him as a prisoner, and the same enemy's medical staff helped keep him alive. Snap, Crackle, Pop did not survive the mission. Most of her crew died. Only a few men from the aircraft lived. Magee's survival did not erase the loss around him. He had fallen out of a dying bomber and lived, but the men who had flown beside him were gone or captured. The miracle people later talked about was surrounded by wreckage, fire, and graves. Once Magee recovered enough to be moved, he was sent into the prisoner of war system. He spent the rest of the war in German captivity, including time connected with Stalag 17B. His body had survived the fall, but he still had to survive prison camp life while recovering from wounds that would have killed many men without the impact. Prisoners endured hunger, cold, uncertainty, and the long wait for news that might never come. Magee had already lived through the impossible, but he was still not free. In May of 1945, as Germany collapsed and the war in Europe ended, Magee was liberated. He returned home carrying wounds, memories, and a story that sounded too extreme to be true. He received the Air Medal and the Purple Heart. After the war, he went on with life in a way that made the survival even harder to imagine. He earned a pilot's license. He worked in the airline industry. He lived for decades after the day he was found broken on the station floor. On the 50th anniversary of the raid, in 1993, the people of Saint-Nazaire honored Magee and the crew of Snap, Crackle, Pop with a memorial. The place where he fell was no longer only a point on a wartime map. It was tied to the men who had flown into the flak, the men who had died, and the one airman who fell without a parachute and somehow lived. Alan Magee died in 2003 at the age of 84. By then, his survival had become one of the most astonishing stories of the air war over Europe. But at the center of it was not a myth. It was a young gunner in a damaged bomber, wounded without a usable parachute, thrown into the open sky over enemy territory. He survived because his body struck glass instead of stone, because the roof broke beneath him, because German doctors treated him, and because a chain of unlikely details lined up in seconds when every normal outcome meant death. He had no control over any of it once he left the aircraft. He could only fall. Thank you for listening to Horrifying Survival Stories. Subscribe for more stories of those who faced the impossible and lived.